Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, well, thank you. This is my first time at Comic-Con. And also, I think at the Javits Center, too, so it's a big deal for me, especially at this hour. Okay. I'm really actually very honored to be here today to talk about the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. Put together, co-founded by my good friends George Lucas and Mellody Hobson. This museum's going to open next year in LA, and so today we're doing a kind of preview. And I'm going to be talking today to three really remarkable artists whose work is actually going to be featured in the inaugural exhibitions at the museum. And I'm going to try to explore a topic that's very close to my heart, which is visual storytelling, which is obviously fundamental to who and what we are as a species, as human beings. From the oldest prehistoric cave paintings, all the way up to the history of painting and photography, birth of movies, evolution of the comic strip, and the comic books I grew up with, right up to the present. And for most of my life, I come from a family that was a working class family, didn't have books in the house. So I knew stories by pictures. And I was impassioned to tell stories with pictures. Doesn't mean there isn't dialogue, but there are pictures. It's a good thing because, I wound up making movies. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know if I could have painted. I would have loved to have painted, but it wound up that the pictures had to move. I've also been entranced by stories told within images, like still images, whether it's a photo, a painting, or an illustration. So I'm excited to get this conversation going. So let me introduce these artists. First, the great mixed media artist, visionary, JR, who's transformed buildings, walls, public spaces around the world into monumental canvases that actually incorporate and speak directly to the people that are living there. The term empowered has been used a lot, but he does empower people to create. In this case, it really applies. So please welcome JR. Next, a legendary fantasy science fiction artist whose work is known and just admired and loved around the world. The illustrator of Tarzan, Conan the Barbarian, Doc Savage, so many other characters. And he's also done album covers, video box art, and posters, film, advertising. Basically, he's done it all. Boris Vallejo. Do you want to move here? Okay. Yeah, you're fine, you're fine. And finally, award-winning fantasy and wildlife artist, the first woman ever to paint Conan for Marvel Comics, and she went on to do remarkable work at Marvel and DC and Image Comics, illustrations, so many companies, Nike, Coca-Cola, book covers, album covers. She has done it all too. Welcome, Julie Bell. Yeah. George Lucas and I have been friends for, longer than I can remember. Probably in '71, we met for the first time, stayed friends. And, he's been speaking about this vision for the museum for so many years, where there's, in a sense, no distinction between what the establishment calls high art and low art. Just images that really spark the emotion. Through the emotion, we're told a story. And it holds us together. Stories connect. share our experiences. We know each other. It becomes a community and becomes a society. He was always said, when it comes to art, no one should force you to tell you what to like. It has to speak to you emotionally. You got to connect with it or not. And that's the whole gamut of art, anything you think in terms of art. You feel it or you don't. What I found kind of living till 82 years old, that what I may not have reacted to at 21, later changed my mind. So art, if it's there, it still can speak to you and it can change. It can tell you different stories as you go on in your life, but you keep your mind open. And this is what something that George and I have always spoken about. And dealing with the museum, the first question I'd like to ask, and start with JR, is maybe what is the definition, or I hate to use the word definition, but what is narrative art to you? How would you define it? What does it mean for you in the work that you do?
Well, I think when I grew up, I didn't even know what was art. I couldn't put a word on it, you know? And so first of all, it took me a while to discover that, because I didn't study art, or I didn't come from, you know, family of artists. So it really was something that just, I thought there was a museum out there and it had nothing to do with it. And I started with graffiti, but graffiti is you write your own name on walls. So I was fascinated by that, but it's more a way of saying I'm here, I exist, you know, I want to leave a mark.
Yeah.
And then slowly I realized it was not enough for me, so I wanted to start writing other people's name on walls by taking their photos and pasting them and then telling their story. And that's how I entered into narrative art without realizing, by telling the stories of others. And if you look at my art today or in the past decades, it's always been about others, about people, about community. But it's all storytelling, because when you take, for example, that giant child that I enlarged at the border between you know, Mexico and the US that you saw there, it's, you know, it raised questions. It doesn't give answers. It's like, what is this child saying there? And, you know, in my art, I always make sure I raise questions, I don't give answers. I feel that I should always remain in the question, because when there's questions, there is hope. There's, you know, there is interest into the unknown. When there's answers, that's it. There's answers. This is what it is. You know, it's one of the reasons I never sign any petition or anything like that, because I cannot, like, I love the idea that there is much more than that, that maybe hope will take us to actually change even much more than we think we could change. And in my art, I realized that the limits are not always where we think they are. But my only way to see that was actually to go and try. So when you put that little kid at the border between Mexico and US, you would think, okay, that's impossible on paper. But when you actually do it, you realize that people around are all helping, the communities coming together. It's like, okay, what is this really saying? Then the border patrol are coming and say, wait, if we take it down, then, you know, it would send a really bad signal. Now that it's here, we should maybe leave it. And you kind of create this kind of interesting conversation. And the only fact that this conversation is possible is because it's just art. They're like, you know, even if they remove it, it's just art. It doesn't really, you know, they don't take it that seriously enough. So it leaves a space, an incredible space of conversation in that gray zone that I called. That gray zone where, you know, I got arrested many times for it. So don't get me wrong. Sometimes I get kicked out, evicted, put in jail. But when I don't, it's really create this incredible conversation. And then, you know, it create bridges that I never thought were possible. And that's what I want to keep working on, creating those bridges.
Julie, maybe you could talk about what narrative art is to you, and if you feel that, well, it's hard to say all images, but why not? All images that tell a story. Maybe you could talk about that a little.
I do feel...
Hey, you move it up to you. There you go. Yeah, I know. There you go.
I do feel, that, you know, all art is going to be narrative in some way, because when you look at it, you're bringing a story to it, just, you know, the way that you interpret what you see, even if you see modern art or whatever that's just, you know, looks pretty plain, you're going to bring some kind of story of your own to it. But I think that narrative art in this sense is important for us because it communicates our culture. And, we've said it here a few times, that it brings people together as a community. But it's, the thing is that,
The story, it kind of gives you a story.
yeah, it
doesn't
gives you a story. And I really do feel that, you were talking about when you were a kid and you had big books and you
Yeah.
had, books with pictures, you connected more with that. And I really feel that the picture is something you see it and instantly you get it. You see it on a bookshelf. That's why our book covers and things like that, they want that to be something that grabs you instantly because you want to feel that story instantly. And that story gets into your mind in some way. And it's much easier, I think, to teach people through a story than it is through a lecture. They're going to accept your message much more readily, I think, if you're, if they see a story, it's got a hero, it's got characters they can identify with or whatever. But I think that stories are that's how it creates a culture and brings us together and teaches, because it's such an instant thing.
I mean, and for me, it was the pictures led to books, to reading, music,
Right.
and painting.
Yeah,
And it just made me more curious and more curious about everything,
Yeah, and that picture is the thing.
That starts
you
it.
see it, and you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Boris and Julie, what do you think it is in your work, both of you, that resonates with so many people around the world, that people relate to it so immediately?
I'm sorry to say this, but my hearing.
Ah.
He was
So-
asking, what do you think it resonates? Well,
Really seriously, the only thing that I can say about that is that I just painted with just all my soul.
Hmm.
And I think that's what people appreciated. And I think that's wonderful.
I
Yeah.
really agree. I think that, when you are painting with your soul that way, that gets transmitted to the person who's looking at it. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what we're passing through and we're teaching is something that's a message from yours. Yes.
That's why it's so difficult for artists to talk about, I find, what they do.
Yeah. It's
Because
true. Yeah.
it's all in here. It's all in the heart,
Right.
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 And if they can convey that, that's amazing.
It's that shared emotion. That's
Yeah.
something that, and that's the beauty of it, is because we cannot put words on it. That often people connect in a way like they'd never connected before.
Yeah.
It is something like religion. The word religion come from the Latin religos, which is linking people.
Yeah.
And so art does that in such an incredible way that we
Yeah.
can't put words.
Well, the stories in religion, the stories in the Torah, and the stories in the even Jesus would tell stories, he'd call them parables, and talk about what you knew, talk about planting seeds, talking about wise men as opposed to foolish people. I mean, this sort of thing, and explaining it in stories.
Yeah.
And taking it right down and getting people in a huddle and saying, hey, here's what happened. This person did that. What do you think is right? What do you think is more interesting?
Yeah. And not only is the story more engaging because it's something fun to listen to.
Yeah, acted it out.
But it also makes you kind of let your guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, am I that kind of a good person? Or am I that other kind of person? Yeah.
Exactly.
But look at movies. I mean, it's still, if you take a step back and you look, we're looking at movies and we're believing into the story. Like if it's real, we're crying. Even if we know there's lighting, it's all actors that are
It's
playing the story.
extraordinary.
It's
Yeah.
extraordinary. It's and the same way that myths have always been told, that cave paintings, or I love what George Lucas said about the Chapel 16. That it was almost like the first animated cartoon.
Yes, exactly. Sistine Chapel,
Yeah, Sistine Chapel.
is God's comic book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. Everybody in the Middle Ages, they would go see a movie. They go to the church, and there's this giant fresco. And they would go through and they'd say, oh, there's so-and-so. And oh, they're dying now. Oh, so one's going to go to hell. One's going to go to heaven. And oh, well, look at hell. It's terrible. Look at heaven. Looks pretty good. I mean, it's like a blockbuster movie, really. And that's what it was. And that's what the people saw. And that's how they were entertained in terms of storytelling,
And comic books God.
And comics.
What,
Oh, yeah.
what a teacher of all kinds of lessons and,
Oh,
really the
yeah.
whole story of, Spider-Man and all these heroes that really have passed on a sense of like a ethical code.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, I was listening to or looking at a podcast the other night, The Rest is History, Tom Holland, Annabrook, talking about that our Western culture is based mainly on Greek myth. And because the Greek myths tell these extraordinary stories, as opposed to other Mesopotamian cultures like Babylon, Egyptian, which they talked about as being more ritualistic in their mythology or in their myths. But the Greek ones stay with us, and it becomes who we are now. It becomes Star Wars. It becomes all of this because of the stories that they created, the identification with the hero, the destruction, whether it's fate or whether you do have logos, whether you do have hope, or it's just Nike, which is fate. That's it. Life is as it's going to be to you, and that's the end of it. This constant back and forth that stayed with us.
And all the way back to cave painting also.
Oh, the cave paintings, yeah. Cave paintings, the bison would have like 20 legs.
Yeah.
Because they wanted it to move.
Right.
So if you had a candle or you had like a flame, and
Can
whatever.
you just imagine the person who thought of that concept? Let's
let's
make
make it move.
Yeah, and everybody's like, what a genius, wow.
And maybe they had a little bit of chemical assistance. You know what I mean? And that those things are moving.
But interestingly, those are probably the first graffiti. But when you really dig into it, a lot of them were made in places that they didn't want anybody to find about it.
That's the secret. That's the special nature of. One would have to go on a journey, a spiritual journey, to get into that cave, and to slide into those narrow places, which are terrifying.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
How it was kept kind of hidden away and protected. I mean, it's protected for one thing.
Yeah.
But it's also sort of
sacred.
Sacred.
Sacred place.
Yeah.
But you have your thing talking about the sacred space you've taken, Jerry. Maybe you could talk about the effect your work has had to have in these communities where you put up the boy looking over the wall, you put up the men in prison, you got ballet dances in France, and even the wonderful stuff that you did with the faces of the people in our friend's movie, Agnes Faces, Places. Maybe you could talk a little about the effect it might have that the art is right there in your life every day, all around you.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about an image, of course, and like all of the images described, there's a piece that, as a community, we create together. But the most interesting part is actually the process of making that piece. The process of it, for me, is the art. So let me give you an example. You were mentioning the prison. So that was a project in a supermax security prison in California. Okay, so imagine a supermax security prison in the middle of the desert, and then on the yard in the middle of that prison, we pasted photos of inmates, guards, and victims all together. Now, all of them came together to paste those images. That's one thing. Then we created a little app that you can actually go online for free and listen to the story of every single one.
That's great.
So, which mic is doing this?
Oh, that was loud. Okay.
So you create an app that people can go and listen to stories. Now, what happened? People, like the families of the inmates, for example, or the guards, they are home, they're listening, and they're like, I'll never forget that story of a guard coming home and his wife saw it on TV because that project, the visual is pretty big, so you cannot miss it.
Yeah, I know you can't.
So it's like, oh, what is this? Is that? Oh, yeah, that's in my yard. I was part of this. Oh, you're part of this. So who are those people? Who is this person here? Oh, it's this inmate, and he knows the number. I know, but who is? I don't know. I've been taking care of him for 20 years, but I don't know. It's just a criminal. Then they click on the story and they hear.
They hear who he is.
From his own audio.
Yeah.
Like 20, 30 minutes of his own perspective on his life, on how he got to go there. The inmates told me the next day that guard said at the end of like a lunch or something, that you stay here. And so he was really afraid of, have I done something wrong? The guy just wanted to shake his hand and say, hey, I've been seeing you, and we've never said hello.
There you go.
And it recreates human contact. Why? Because you get to know about the other.
This is the key. Yeah.
And then recognizing the other, pain or struggle, are like suddenly putting, a face. And I feel art is really putting dignity of people who have lost it.
Mhm.
And then we've walked in this prison for 5 years. What had happened is then victims have reconnected, with the inmates, guards, etc. And after some time, also people who had changed and were not getting noticed got noticed. And we actually have data. We have had so much impact in that prison because of art, that one of my big things is that art can change the world.
Yeah.
But changing the world doesn't mean we're going to change the world. How are we going to start that? It's actually just meaning if you change your perspective on the world.
Yeah. It's individual.
Exactly. You're changing the world, because if suddenly I was like, oh, you're a bad person, and I am seeing it from another angle, maybe not. Maybe there's things that you've done bad, but that's not all of your sides. And you start seeing people looking at each other differently. That's such an incredible, powerful thing that I've been doing in so many places, so many countries, and each time with the help of the community. And that's really the strength. I'll give you an example that just happened 10 days ago in Paris. There was a chef, a famous French chef, who came to me a year and a half ago, and he said, I lost my son because he got hit by a drunk driver. JR, would you do a project? And I said, look, it's very personal to you. I understand, but I think you should do the project. He said, no, you don't understand. I'm a chef. I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
I said, no, I created a project called Inside Out. You take photos of people, you send them to me, I will print them for free, and then you'll paste them. I said, go and find other families that, like you, have lost someone. And he started an organization of people and realized that every year in France, it's 700 people that get hit by a drunk driver. And in every country, there's its own data. And what he did over 1 year, he gathered all those photos. And when I came 10 days ago, they had pasted an entire bridge in Paris in front of the Eiffel Tower.
That's incredible.
With all the faces of the people that remained.
Wild.
Like the families that are there and are missing their loved one. 400 families had came together and they lighted the Eiffel Tower like specifically for that night. Now, everybody knew there that those photos were not going to stay. They were just there for a couple hours.
Yeah.
You'd have seen that emotion on the square that night. It's like if suddenly there was a monument being put and everybody was like, wow. Someone came and said, 30 years ago, I lost my little brother, my little sister, and there never was an event or something that recognized. And finally, I feel tonight was the case. And in my head, I was like, wow, art is so powerful because it's, first of all, I'm feeling their pain, but also we all here knowing, and even if this doesn't stay, yet we feel seen,
You've had this experience.
Seen. Yeah. And so I've seen this in so many ways. And I know that that's what the museum will do too, because when you go there, the architecture is so impressive that first of all, you know that what you're going to see, it's going to impress you also because you're walking and you're feeling, okay, there's something bigger than us, which we need to as human, that's why we when you walk to certain monuments, suddenly your heart opens in a different way. And when you enter and you'll see this incredible art, I mean, there's something that moves you that sometimes sits in you for years that you might understand way later.
And later on,
It was the same for me. But, how many times we got dragged in museums and
then suddenly.
But I feel finally there's one where you walk in and you're like, oh my God, how did they get the rights to put all of this in there, And so that's what I think is fascinating with narrative art is that we are made of stories. We cannot live without stories, This is like literally as humans, what we need to survive.
Yeah, and then painting itself is be able to paint is such a blessing. The painting can exist for quite a long time. I make movies. They don't really exist. In order to see them, you have to have electricity. Some kind of thing that makes it run. Yeah, we'll move it or you can act it out. They don't exist. So it's an experience we have, like you're saying, an experience for 1 hour or 2 hours. And yet we go through this emotion, which we're bringing, and it depends on how it's projected and that sort of thing. But a painting can actually stay for quite a while. Look at those prehistoric caves and the beautiful paintings coming. Well, a lot of the frescoes from ancient Greece and Rome and all the way through the Middle Ages. And now the work of 20th century artists, 21st century artists. In the case of museums, what I wanted to ask Boris and Julie is, your legends and the fantasy and science fiction art. And I wonder why this type of art, the genre, so to speak, doesn't get more recognition in the art world, museum world, for example. Is it simply taste, or does one could say, well, it has to go through, you have to be maybe after 50 years recognized, or I don't know, maybe you could speak to that, Boris and Julie,
I think that, well, number one, a museum is generally, it's always started by either an individual or a group, that has a lot of resources, and they also have some kind of a vision and mission that they're representing, usually, right?
Yeah.
And so I think their standard of what they want to say is going to change very slowly over time.
Slowly.
Yeah, very slowly. And then they have boards of directors, and that makes it really slow.
That's
the
right,
board, but it is a very interesting thing how, I think they are starting to feel more for,
I would
art,
think,
and,
yeah.
you see things coming and going, but I think that, this Lucas Museum really is going to change everything that way, because it's a huge thing that somebody's putting a lot of money and effort into, and it's a statement. It is such a bold statement to come out with something that isn't already popular with a museum.
Yeah.
And so now the other museums, thinking they're going to see
They're going to have to deal with that. Yes.
Yeah.
They should also deal with cinema itself too. I
Yeah.
was going to, dealing with the Metropolitan Art, to have cinema as part of an exhibit, to recognize it as an art form.
Right.
But you're right. It does have a lot to do with the nature of the beast itself, which is the machine. The machine is slow to deal with. You have people, you have everybody's different. They're different interests.
Yes.
And want to be represented for certain things. So.
And they're afraid to step outside.
Oh yeah, they absolutely. Yeah. Well, they lose funding.
A little different.
They'll lose the money too.
Yeah.
I mean, So these academies, so to speak, may be slow on the take.
But those challenges are important. Remember, painting was the only thing that existed in terms of art, and then photography came, and people were like, "Oh my God, painting is gonna die. Photography is coming." And then photography arrived, and painting didn't die at all.
It didn't die.
And then actually, photography created like movies, and then movies created a whole form of art. And now today, AI and all other form of art, which constantly challenge. I feel that the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art is almost like AI arriving into the world of museum and coming disrupting.
Yeah.
This is how much it's gonna create an electroshock to that world.
Well, George has always said that he's wanting to focus on celebrity celebrating illustrators and other unsung artists, and in so doing out bringing people who don't normally go to museums or normally can't get to a museum, and there's an interesting term he uses. It calls it the people's art. And JR, you've echoed this idea. You've said in the street, we reach people who never go to museums. And we just said this now. And you do it with images, monumental scale, and people are part of the community. We talked about that. But also, some of your work has appeared in a museum, right?
Yeah.
And what would be like, what's the difference between a museum, work in a museum, as opposed to, an outer wall of a factory, or what you did on the bridge in Paris? What do those differences mean to you?
Well, to me, you have to understand that since the beginning, I've always put my art in the street. So when people don't like it, they can pee on it or scratch it down, So it's pretty straightforward.
Well, that's what they do.
That's what they do.
I know.
Exactly. So I have no ego there. It's actually a direct communication with my audience. And in different countries, different places. And also a storm can come in. Like there's a storm coming in today.
Oh,
so
it'll
usually,
destroy. Yeah.
Yeah. When I have a pasting and there's a storm today, my art's gonna disappear. Well, one of the reasons why I documented, why I also make films like I did with Agnes Varda and so on, it's because it keeps a trace of it. So museums are like the gatekeepers, and my collectors are the gatekeepers of that art.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like you said, Julie, the when you see an image, you cannot unseen it, and so that little kid at the border, it was there only for 1 month, but that image
Yeah,
still
but that
resonates.
stays.
People still see that image. They cannot forget it. It was at some point there, and for that moment, it changed the perspective, and it keeps changing it after. So, to me, talking with an audience that's not expecting to see art, and this is the most exciting thing. I can't tell you the number of times where I've done installation. I remember in Kenya in 2009, I've pasted eyes of women on a train, and the train would go through one of the largest slums in Africa. And at some point, it arrived in the middle of the slum, and there would just be the bottom of the faces,
Oh,
gigantic,
wow.
the size of building. But for days, people were wondering, why is this artist have only put the bottom of faces and there's not the rest,
Uh-huh.
And suddenly the train would come, and it would never stop. It would just match.
The eyes will go right by.
And I was
Wow.
looking, and a lot of
Yeah,
people were
man.
looking, but we haven't announced it. And I'll never forget that man coming home with his groceries, with the train on his back, who never looked back. He had no idea.
wow.
He was just walking. He was in his mind, and in my head, I was like, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
I
this
thought you were
is
going to say he dropped it.
no. It's like he never saw it, and that's the beauty of it. It's you're also surprising people. We did this on the Paris Opera last year, where we literally I wrapped the entire opera, and then we projected opera inside a cave, so that you would literally, it was a projection mapping, you'd enter into the cave, and watch opera. There was 10,000 people on the square, but cars were still passing, people who were just on their way taking the subway, they would stop for a minute. The beauty of catching people when they don't expect it, they might remember it for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
that's
and make a
something
change. Yeah.
that's it fascinates me, and I hope I keep doing, and I feel this is a place that George and Mellody are creating that is inviting for that, where we will be surprised. You think you're walking in a museum, and you're walking into thousands of stories, thousands of storytelling, and that's such an incredible thing that we do need in this society today, that is so polarized, where we need stories to help us at
Know
least
each
share
other.
a common
Yeah.
emotion.
And
Exactly.
these kind of stories really are common stories. Like they're all the stories of the human,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they teach you how to be a human.
Exactly.
So it really is very perfect way to bring community together.
I mean, I guess the final question is that, but I think we're answering it now, and that is, what do you hope, Boris and Julie and AR, what do you hope the experience of the Lucas Museum, what doors is it going to open for the next generation? Is it talk about opening the mind, so to speak, or?
Yeah, I really hope. Yeah, I mean, I hope that people of all ages are going to walk in there, especially younger kids, and just be enthralled by these gorgeous images and things, and then it'll have all the feelings and stories and the characters that they want to grow up to be like.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but it's true. I wish there was a museum like that when I grew up,
Yeah, oh my
that was
gosh,
just
can you
approaching it in a different way. And I just wish, but it's okay. Look, I remember for me, the biggest museum was when I grew up was internet. I could put my stuff out there. I had no idea that there was galleries and museum, and that actually gave me so much freedom to do things without even thinking. But now that there is, and now that a whole new generation can be like, oh, one day I could be exhibited there. There's also a place for my art, and that's something that is
That's a good
mind blowing.
point. I like that. I
Mhm.
like that because the museums, as they are in general, they're so untouchable. You
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah.
Class or
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly, that system.
You kind of have to go to the right school. right
Yeah,
people and
exactly. But
everything,
we used to just go as kids. We used to just go up to the Met sometimes, and we're 12, 13, or 14 years old, and walk around. No instruction, we're just looking at these things. One museum that's interesting too here is the New York Historical Society. They had, and they still do, Thomas Cole's paintings, the Hudson River Valley painters, and he did something called the Course of Empire, I think. And it has 5 paintings, 4 normal size one and 1 big one in the middle. And it has, we were fascinated as kids. You can actually go up and look at it. It was like watching a big Hollywood epic of the ancient world or something. You saw this land and this little location or whatever that had nobody there, a couple of little figures. And the next painting, there were some huts and a society being built. A third painting, a little more. And then the middle painting was at the height of its empire. And then the last painting was the destruction of the empire. It was, last days of Pompeii, in effect. And it's still there. You should go take a look at them. Thomas. And they were the first ones that I kind of knew as almost like popular art in a way. They weren't in the Met.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a very tactile museum. You can go in and just hang around there. It's really wonderful. But look, we have to wrap it up. So on behalf of Lucas Museum and everybody here, I want to thank JR and Julie Bell and Boris Vallejo. And thank you to George and Mellody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you.